One of the reasons I started watching anime is that it felt different from anything I'd seen prior. That doesn't have to mean that I always thought it was better than the shows and movies I'd seen previously, but that there was this indescribable feel to anime in general that made it something unique and exciting to me. Even if a storyline wasn't all that remarkable, I still felt this joy that I didn't really experience in any of the countless movies and series I'd seen before. And this feeling of excitement that nearly every anime gave me slowly began to fade away over time. No, there's nothing wrong with that, because of course as you watch more and more of something new and refreshing, it will begin to feel familiar someday, and you might pick up on more of the tropes and eventually watch fewer and fewer of, in this case, random anime that you just happen to discover, and focus more on the shows that you've already heard a lot of praise about or are already really popular. I'm sure I wouldn't even start or watch more than a couple of episodes of a good amount of anime I used to enjoy and find interesting a few years ago, and I probably saw less anime the last 3 years combined compared to my first year watching, and I think that's kinda sad, but at the same time watching less forgettable shows gives you more time for other things like playing story-heavy games like JRPGs for me recently. I don't know if that's a good thing, but more variety and entertainment helps me not getting burnt out on anime, and that's at least something good. The reason I'm talking about all of this is because Makoto Shinkai's newest movie, Suzume, gave me that same kind of fun and excitement I felt when discovering anime for the first time. Now, I'm not saying that Suzume is the most unique and mind-blowing anime you'll ever see, and there will be a lot of things you've probably seen similar somewhere else before, especially if you're already familiar with other Makoto Shinkai works like Your Name, but I still think that Suzume is an exciting experience and made me remember that something like this, that can make me feel just happy watching it, no matter how positive or dark a moment may be, is the exact reason I fell in love with anime. Just this excitement I felt that I can't give you a concrete reason for as to why, besides everything like animation, music, story and characters just coming together to build this beautiful experience that, at least for me, made me just happy I chose to see what anime was about and still watch them, even if not as much as before. Like I said, when compared to something like Your Name, for example, Suzume may not be the most unique story or concept, and I can see why some people might think about Suzume as another slightly altered version of the kind of story Makoto Shinkai has told multiple times now, with its two main characters separated by something that prevents them from being together, like any kind of distance, age, or any other thing he can come up with to prevent the leads from being together. But I think that sort of story still works for me, and even if it doesn't hit me emotionally as much as something like Your Name, it's still a movie I'm glad I saw and will remember for quite some time. Speaking of Your Name in comparison to Suzume, this is probably something no one cares about, but I just found it funny that the title is something that's literally the last thing said in that movie in comparison to Suzume, where the title is already said countless times in the first few minutes.
君の名前はすずめそれからすずめすずめすずめすずめすずめすずめ
I definitely think some things could be improved in Suzume, like the ending. No spoilers, but I would have wished for a little bit more emotion from the main characters about what happened with another character. If you've seen it, you probably know what I'm talking about here, and I didn't really notice it at first, but at some point there are just too many product placements to not notice them. But in the end, I think there's also a lot about Suzume I wish I'd see more of in other anime, like the focus on the daily lives of so many different people across a country, which was one of the aspects I also loved in Link Click, and the general feeling towards a slightly older audience than Your Name again, as an example. Not saying that one is better than the other, I just feel like Suzume might be aimed at an at least slightly older viewership with its themes and generally older characters. That's also something I wish more anime had. Characters who are in their 20s or 30s or possibly even older than that. Fate Zero, Wotakoi, Black Lagoon, Spice and Wolf and Grand Blue are just some examples with a main cast older than your typical anime or manga set in a school, and I think we need more. Another thing that surprised me about Suzume was its humor. Of course, this movie isn't a comedy and more of an adventure fantasy coming-of-age story, but I was surprised at how many scenes were actually quite funny to me, like the first chase. I don't think you need the context to understand what's actually going on here right now. It's probably gonna be funny either way, just because you wouldn't expect something like this going into the movie, and there are more scenes like this that caught me off guard. I'm usually quite critical of comedy in anime. More often than not, anime that are supposed to be comedies or are at least advertised that way seem boring and uninspired to me, and I'm not a fan of almost every shonen trying to be funny when there's currently nothing too serious happening in the story. Seriously, I don't know what it is about shonen, but it's so rare to find one that doesn't use every chance it gets to try to be funny. I don't think think this would be such an issue for me if it wasn't that common, and I'm glad shonen that don't feel the need to be funny as often as possible, or at least try to be funny in a different way, are becoming more common. Using humor in unexpected ways is something I really appreciate, and I feel like Suzume does this more than I expected. By the way, I of course also have anime where I just love how ridiculously funny they can get, but I just wish that especially shonen would tone down the comedic scenes at least a little bit, and I think Makoto Shinkai knows how and when to use comedy and when to be serious, and that elevates those scenes more for me, knowing they won't get in the way of other more somber moments. I think these more emotional moments are another and perhaps even the biggest strength of Makoto Shinkai. Not everyone is going to feel something, but when you see, and sorry for all the times I mention your name, I just love it and it's the perfect opportunity to talk about it here. But when you see scenes like the main characters first meeting each other or the end of your name, it's hard not to feel at least something. And Suzume also has multiple scenes that impacted me in some way. Maybe not to the same extent as your name, but honestly I think that's just fine. Not everything needs to blow your mind or make you question your entire life and existence. Sometimes an enjoyable 2-hour experience is enough to brighten up my mood and make me glad I put up with a bad day or week, if it means that there are things like this waiting for me at the end. I just wanted to share some of my thoughts I had about this movie and anime in general since first watching Suzume. I think it, as well as other Makoto Shinkai stuff, is worth watching at least once, and that reminds me again that I've seen not nearly enough anime movies. I don't know what it is about them, but I just tend to watch anime shows more than movies, and if this movie wasn't by someone I already had seen other work of, then I probably wouldn't have watched it. I don't know how common it is to watch way more shows than movies, but if you haven't seen many anime movies, then I would suggest watching more. There are a lot of really memorable ones, and some of my favorite anime are movies. And please make manga too short for whole seasons into anime movies. Some definitely deserve a good adaptation but are too short for a whole season. And not nearly enough people actually read manga. But anyway, I wish you a great rest of the day and bye.